Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is being with what's so. Oftentimes we try to sugarcoat our situation. We try to manipulate our emotions so that we don't feel them. We try to justify and rationalize or ignore or deny. And how can we possibly expect to be able to move forward until we allow ourselves the opportunity to really be with what's there? So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. And good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. It should be a very interesting conversation, but before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the pressure, the motion, the temperature, the friction, and even the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Good morning, Sue. How wonderful to have you here with us. Just in case you folks who are watching or listening don't know, Sue and Dido are a dynamic duo, a dynamic duo who enable all this wonderfulness, who are behind the scenes supporting technically and promotionally all the wonderfulness that happens here on Enlightened World Network. And I am so honored to have your support, Sue, and to have you joining us, and so grateful for all the work that you do. So wonderful to have you here with us. Anyway, and of course, while I'm acknowledging, we've got to acknowledge our well, the goddess, I'll call her the goddess of Enlightened World Network, and that's Ruth Anderson. This is her baby, her concept, her energy that has made this wonderfulness of allowing people a platform to share all kinds of lessons and learnings with you. So we have great gratitude for Ruth and for Sue and for Dido. And what a great way to start off the morning. I had thought about talking about gratitude today, and here we are, getting to appreciate the generosity of heart and soul that is provided to all of us by these wonderful people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyway, we're talking about being with what's so, and what that means is just like what is really happening. So many of us, being transformationally oriented, have all kinds of judgments when we feel angry or frustrated or even vindictive or shamed, or all kinds of things that we have these ideas about how we shouldn't feel those ways. And the thing is that when we feel those ways, we feel those ways. And what we get to do is not, well, we can. I mean, sometimes some of us deny these things, push them away into a closet where we can close the door, jam the door shut, and not have to look at these things. But the thing is that if we're truly committed to transformation, it means being willing to see the ugly, and maybe even suspend the judgment of the ugly, and just be able to be where we are, to recognize, wow, I am really angry right now. What's going on with that? What does it feel like in my body? What might have triggered it? Because all these things, what if all these experiences, not just the wonderful ones, are here to help us awaken, help us to grow, help us to learn, help us to discover. So if I get really angry over something, clearly I've been triggered. Something's going on. There's the thing that got me angry, or that I got angry about. Nothing gets us angry. We get angry. But there's the thing that I got angry about, and that there may be justifiable reason to be angry about that thing. And also the fact that I've gotten so angry about it is something for me to look at, like, what's going on for me? What is that offending, that circumstance? What is that circumstance offending in me that I have such an extreme reaction to it? And where is the place within me that needs to be healed around that, so I can use that opportunity rather than denying it or avoiding it or burying it in some way. So Rosalind says, turning to self and wonder, how am I misperceiving or gave the wrong perception? So yeah, and I don't know that I would necessarily qualify it as misperceiving. Maybe, how am I perceiving this? Because given, if we say, how am I perceiving this, and what's behind that, maybe given the backstory or the understory, it's totally reasonable that we would be perceiving it the way that we were perceiving it. So how do we ever know what's perception and misperception? I don't know that we can make the distinction, because it's all guided by the filters and the history and the context that each of us has to perceive. So I think maybe we can be perceiving something accurately, or recognizing the dynamics. For instance, like, let's say somebody does something and it's clearly a breach, it's clearly a violation, it's clearly something that is egregious, and I get crazy worked up over it. So they're the two pieces, right? There's what's here, what's happening, and then there's my response. And so recognizing this in this conversation of being with what's so, that my response is part of what's so. Like, I'm recognizing my response. I'm taking a moment to be present to, oh wow, like, this was a massive trigger for me. I get to address the situation, and I get to address what it is that's happening for me in regard to the situation, and not try and paper it over or sugarcoat it. I was reading a book, and it was talking about how, I call that spiritual bypassing. That's not my term. I just have seen it elsewhere, and I think that that's an accurate example. but let's say, what they were talking about is this spiritual bypassing. They didn't call it that. And how we tend to sugarcoat. And if it's a pile of poop, it's still a pile of poop with sugar on it, So we get to look at what's there and deal with that, not try and say, oh, this is an uncomfortable feeling, so I'm just going to convert it to something else. In the moment, maybe that's the most appropriate thing to do, is to address that in the moment and say, okay, well, I'm going to shift my perspective here because it's inappropriate for me to be wigging out in this context, whatever. And then to come back later, and when it's more appropriate time, to say, okay, so what in the world's going on here? What is this? Why am I so reactive? What would I have to be thinking or believing to be that reactive? What situation in my life is that bringing forward for me? Because typically when we're hyper reactive to something, it's because it's triggering something in our past. It's that all of a sudden we're not in the present anymore. We're reliving something that occurred in our past. So when we talk about with being with what is, we often have all kinds of judgments about ourselves, like it's not elevated, it's not nice, it's not kind, it's not magnanimous, like to feel angry or to feel petty, or it's like, who am I? I'm not a petty person. I'm not angry. I'm not vengeful. I'm not any number of other things. And when we find ourselves acting in the ways that we don't believe or don't want to believe ourselves to be, we will often just sort of push that out of our awareness so that we don't have to deal with it. So the thing that we get to do is give ourselves permission, and here's something that can help us do that. So to recognize, maybe in a given moment I'm feeling spiteful, and I don't like that aspect of myself. What we can allow ourselves to do, and I think we can allow ourselves to do this more readily than letting go of the spitefulness. Let go of that feeling, let go of that, like how when you're in the midst of it, do you let go of it? Especially, and I've said this before, being Westerners, this whole letting go thing, it's like a foreign concept, right? We're all about accumulating, just culturally, that's what we're about, for good or for ill. So what if instead of this trying to pretend it doesn't exist or trying to let go, what if we expand our notion of who we are to allow ourselves to include, sometimes I feel spiteful, sometimes I feel angry, sometimes, and that's all part of me, all of that. I get to be bigger than any one experience, one side of experience. And as I am able then to include those aspects in my experience, I can recognize that those aspects are not the entirety of my experience. Those aspects do not define me. They are one element of a much grander, expansive definition. So Rosalind says, the mind wants to defend a position, and the new me had a bouncer at the door and says, don't enter yet. So the extra time helps, so I don't say anything to aggravate the situation. I love it. So this is true. The mind wants to defend a position. And I don't know about you, but I've seen myself on multiple occasions get embroiled in this argument or this defense over something that I don't even really care about, or expressing a more extreme opinion than I actually feel or think or hold, rather. So agree, and good for you to be able to give yourself a little bit of extra time, like the 5-second rule or something before responding to something, to find a place of center, to find a place of presence. And sometimes also it's okay to aggravate the situation. Like, what does it mean to aggravate the situation? Does it mean clarifying something, coming to a mutual understanding? Sometimes it's challenging. Conflict is not necessarily a negative thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that we don't ever talk again, or that we don't have any, it doesn't mean the end of a relationship necessarily, right? Sometimes it's a matter of how we express our disagreement or our conflicting view, for instance. Good morning, Jenny. How great to have you here with us. Welcome, welcome. And Sue says, I can try to shift my perspective and come back later to uncover what triggered me. Something from the past may be coming up again. 100%. In fact, when we get triggered, we can pretty much guarantee that it is something from the past coming up again. And it's often a windy road of weird associations that are under the surface. There's this whole network. We talk about the mycelial network, the network of mushrooms and fungus and all these roots and tendrils informing each other and nourishing each other under the surface of the soil or in the soil. And I think that that's the case for each of us when we get into our emotions and our reactivity. There's this whole ecosystem underneath there with weird associations, right? So I've been discovering some things and weird associations for myself around weight loss and the state of my body and feeling healthy, and seeing how that somehow feeds into sexuality and I mean, like, all these weird convolutions that don't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily identify them from the superficial observation, right? So, it's interesting as we explore, we are this wonderful treasure trove of curious connections. At least I find that I'm endlessly fascinated by that, which is one of the reasons that I so enjoy the work I do with the core connection work, because there is always something new showing up in terms of the way that one person associates all these different things that seemingly are unrelated. Like the way we weave things together in our hearts and minds and spirits is often at cross purposes and cross wiring. It's crazy. I use that word just not clinically here, but it's wild to see how we have these things wired together that don't necessarily belong. And let me think what the phrase is with science is. Well, I'll just speak the point. correlation is not necessarily causation, meaning these things exist at the same time, but it doesn't mean that one thing is causing the other. And so, for instance, when let's say I'm outside and I trip, and as I trip, there's a butterfly in front of me. It's not like the butterfly caused me to trip, right? There was a correlation. Here's a butterfly and I tripped, but my mind might go and create a phobia around butterflies because butterflies make you trip. So that's the kind of crazy wild wiring that we are subject to. And so being with what's so enables us maybe to uncover those false correlations that we have or those correlations that we've converted into faulty causation. So going back to the butterfly and tripping conversation, let's say I am able to go back to what's so. What so is I tripped and there's a butterfly, and I see that somehow my brain wired it up, or my being wired it up, that the butterfly made me trip, but that's not what happened, right? So then I can give myself a little bit more freedom in recognizing, oh, maybe these things aren't necessarily related, or I'm having this emotional reaction. I get to address that emotional reaction, maybe not in this moment, but as you said, Sue, maybe I can come back to it when it's a better time. Same thing really that you were saying, Rosalind, is give yourself a little bit of space, address the circumstance in the moment, and then you be curious. Be curious, being with what's so, like, oh wow, I got angry. Does it make me it's not like it makes me a bad person. I got angry. Humans get angry, or humans go numb, or humans do all kinds of other things, have all kinds of other patterns. What the benefit is, what the gift is to be willing, if we are willing and courageous enough to look. There's information there. There's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity for us to learn. There's an opportunity for us to heal as we become aware of these associations, of these triggers. And the bottom line of this is to be able to do that without judgment, like to replace our judgment with curiosity. It's like, wow, I can't believe I behaved that way. What in the world was up with that? What was that about? Without the judgment, okay, maybe we behaved in a way that we wouldn't prefer. And so we get to look at it with curiosity to gain some insight, because these situations, when we are willing to look at them, are gifts. They're learning opportunities. They're opportunities for healing. And it takes some degree of courage to, when we feel really ashamed, for example, of a way that we've behaved, it takes courage to be able to look at that, to be present to it, to be willing to engage with it, and to cultivate curiosity rather than judgment, to say, okay, here's this behavior. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm so embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so why am I so embarrassed? What's going on? What am I thinking? What's underneath that? What does this trigger from the past? What am I afraid of? So we have these opportunities all the time when we allow ourselves to be present. When we are, and being present is being able to be with what's there. it's almost holding a paradox, right? Holding the experience of whatever the shame, the blame, the judgment, embarrassment, anger, whatever the feelings, sorrow, whatever the feelings are. And then to be able to stand back and be curious to understand more deeply that whatever the circumstance is, it's a gateway to richer awareness, to richer presence, to richer wholeness, that all of that's available to us. And it means stepping away from judgment. We can recognize our judgment. We can say, wow, okay, I'm really being harsh in my judgment about this right now. Or I've got a lot of feelings about this. What's going on? What is it? What would I have to believe or think in order to feel that way? What happened that predisposed me to that idea and that association or that avoidance? What is it I'm trying to avoid? What is it I don't want to see? Or what is it I'm not seeing? So these questions lead us into a space of richer awareness and hopefully deeper compassion for ourselves and for others. Because if we've got all these foibles, if we've got all this going on, maybe that person that just bit my head off, maybe they've got some stuff going on of their own. And maybe the way that they responded to me wasn't personal. Maybe it was their own stuff. And maybe I can find some space of compassion for them also. So being with what's so, rather than sugarcoating it or papering over it, because until it's addressed, it's still there and there's going to be lumps in the wallpaper, right? So I think that's it for this morning. I want to thank you, as always, for being willing to engage in these sometimes confronting conversations. And that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living Facebook pages. And until next time, so much love to you.